project is making a concrete canoe. So our main problem is how to make the concrete canoe flow. First, we define the solution. So we basically using a canoe-like shape structure and incorporating styrofoam and mesh materials and concrete vermiculite to mix them together. But when we making them, we found out it's impossible to add styrofoam. So we narrowed our topic to only vermiculite and concrete. So we test different textures of concrete. So we mixed several kinds, and we find pure concrete with vermiculite is the best solution. So we start our building process. We just use mesh material and simple construction concrete. But when we tested, it didn't float. So we basically failed our project, and we start rebuild everything.
Alright, go ahead.
I don't think she's floating. So since our first concrete canoe kind of failed, we had to go back to our design cycle again. Defining the problem, still the same problem. We still had to make concrete float, but now we just have to try to find a better way to do it. So for our solutions, on the first canoe we kind of had this cardboard thing in the middle, and it didn't quite carve out enough in the center to make it hollow enough to float. So we kind of tried to add more of the mesh material in the middle, since it's sturdier than cardboard and didn't disintegrate as easy. And then narrow and selecting, basically just trying to find the other materials to make it better in the middle, so then again the weight distribution is better. And building, we just did the same process, just incorporating the different materials and again putting in the concrete, mixing it and letting it sit. And testing and checking, well, it kind of fell apart on us because our mesh material was a little big on the ends, so it didn't quite go all the way around. So we didn't exactly have concrete all the way around, so we didn't really test this one because it would have been pointless. So that was our second attempt at our concrete canoe.
So now we're on our third attempt to build a successful canoe. Our problem is still the same, making the concrete float. We're under a little bit of time constraint now. We're basically making one on Sunday night, and the design day is on Tuesday, so that's a little bit of a problem as well. Our solution now is to make a rounded bottom. Our previous solutions came to a point at the bottom. We feel that a round bottom would help it evenly distribute the weight. So a narrow and select is basically, we're just using regular concrete again, but we're creating a round bottom this time, and that'll help distribute the weight more evenly. The building process, it's a little bit different. Before we had used the mesh material. This time we're using cups, and we cut out the cups to get that round, that perfectly round structure, and we cut them, glued a couple together, whatnot, did all that so it would be a smooth structure. Since we were under a time constraint and didn't have the proper time to let it dry, we actually put it in the oven to speed up the drying process. That seemed to work pretty good. It was actually pretty dry, and it wasn't overheated that it cracked or anything. The test and check, unfortunately it still did not float. It seemed like it wanted to. One end was a little bit heavier, so it kind of sank one end, and that brought down the other end. But again, we're under the time constraint. We didn't have that much time to create another one. And so basically the end of the cycle was us painting the canoe, putting it in the competition, and that was the end of our cycle.
when it came to the FED competition, since the previous night we tried canoe, it didn't float. So we were definitely hoping for some miracles to happen. So when it came to the FED, unfortunately it failed. The canoe didn't float, and that's the result.
You can into your canoe. If it's 0, that's okay. If it's 1,000, that's also good. All right. Here you go.
We
Go ahead and
tried.
fill out the top section. All right.
Strong
That
0.
would be-
You get a strong 0.
You guys fit inside the dimensions. Width is just about right. Depth is good. So I got 0 pounds for you guys. All right.
When it came to constructing the concrete canoe, there were several design challenges that we faced. One was obviously making the concrete float. That was probably the biggest challenge, to actually make it so the concrete would float and the canoe would be a successful canoe. Another one was meeting the dimension requirements. We were given certain length, width, and depth requirements, so we could only make our canoe to a certain length and width and so on. So we had to structure our canoe so that it would not be disqualified and it would be a legal canoe. Another aspect was actually making the canoe resemble a real canoe. This wasn't too hard. It's basically, just to create a rounded structure that's longer than it is wider. Some of the other groups, obviously one group made just a box, which not really a canoe-like, but so this was another thing we had to keep in mind, but not our biggest priority.
Alright, so if we had to do this again, we would definitely probably start earlier, because going down to the last day for our canoe kind of made it difficult. And also, I don't know that we had as much research in it as we should have done. We did learn a good bit, but then again, there's always ways to improve our canoe. And for next year's freshmen, if you're doing this project, I suggest doing what everybody else did and just cover the styrofoam in concrete. Doesn't really make sense to me. It's a concrete canoe, but it floats and it holds weight, unlike ours. So that's my advice to next year's freshmen.